Thank you for visiting Past the Wire TV, the YouTube channel of PastTheWire.com.
And more spirit takes over coming past the wire. It will be more spirit to win the Los Alamitos Futurity by a length and a half.
This is just an unbelievable day for Bob Baffert and Mike Smith. They are unstoppable. More Spirit has dominated the Met Mile. He won it by 7 lengths. Horses have reached the starting gate. It's post time. Cold Front, the favorite, comes forward. And they're into the stretch. Cold Front put to the 10. Cold Front does it again. Firing the field of the Amsterdam.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Past the Wire TV for one of the most exciting race cards and specifically races of the entire year. I don't know, maybe because I'm from New York and grew up going to Saratoga, but the Travers for me has been one of the most exciting and anticipated races since I was a little kid. And I'm really happy to do this roundtable with Sette, who is a longtime contributor to Past the Wire, writes excellent columns, swept the Breeders' Cup card a couple of years ago for us. We still don't forget that one. And Michael Vale, my co-host on our Gate to Wire podcast, excellent handicapper in his own right. We're going to deep dive the Travers, gentlemen. So before we do, Gio, you're the historian here. Give us a little Travers history.
Sure. I mean, guys, first things first, who's better than us? I'm delighted to be part of this roundtable with you guys. And one of the things that brings us to the Travers every year, you think about it, you know, the season 3-year-olds, the Midsummer Derby, when we get to the Travers, people forget the Travers has been around longer than the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
So it's such an intriguing race. It's got such an established, storied history. And to me, because the 3-year-olds have been seasoned throughout the year in all the battles, and we have a few of them in this race, it puts you in a position to say, hey, this is exactly where we need to be, 1.25 miles. The town is just buzzing everywhere. I've already made 2 trips to Saratoga this year. I wish I could be there. I've been there for the Travers before. I've had my face in the race. No kidding you. At least for 42 years now. I haven't missed one. So the history of storytelling, a few years back, I believe it was 2015, American Pharoah came in as the Triple Crown winner. And he didn't even win the Travers. He was beat by the developing Keen Ice.
Yeah, run down.
You can remember that, yeah. And everybody was there to see Pharoah waltz around the track, and he was beat. So the history is compelling, and we're here today to talk about it, and I'm excited to be part of it.
Absolutely.
Well, they don't call Saratoga the graveyard of favorites or champions for nothing, do they?
Right.
Was that your favorite Travers you've ever seen, Gio, or is there one that comes to mind?
That one was most compelling because of the intrigue of American Pharoah coming in, being the Triple Crown winner. There's so many. I don't want to take too much of your time. There's so many that I'll go back and think of. I do remember Todd Pletcher's. I think it goes back a decade with Stay Thirsty.
Oh, yeah. Stay Thirsty was 2011, I believe.
Yeah, 2011. So, yeah, that's one that comes to mind. I know that Javier Castellano, who's not even getting a mount in this race, he's won it 6 times.
Yeah, he went on a tear for a while, Javi. Yeah. He went on a tear.
Yeah. So, there's many I can mention. I'm intrigued every year. And, a lot of folks forget that the history goes back to 1864 or something like that, prior to Kentucky Derby and Preakness fame.
I'll mention a few because I'll go back further than you that I was there for. I spent every summer, every August, the whole meet at Saratoga when I was a kid growing up because my dad was a mutual clerk. So we went up for the whole meet, you know. We left our apartment in Brooklyn and we were in Saratoga. It was a 4-week meet back then. I remember thinking that I was smart betting against Pleasant Colony in the slop as a kid at Saratoga, and betting a filly by the name of Chris Everett that Joe Travato trained and didn't win. I mean, bet a filly in the slop in the Travers is a tough proposition. I think a horse named Willow Owl won the race with Eddie Maple. I remember being there when General Assembly won and ran away with the race. I had gone back to New York the day before and drove back not to miss the Travers, and got back to the track about a half hour before the race and liked General Assembly. Everybody said at that time, you know, they were already knocking Secretariat as a sire, and General Assembly was going to be the one that, you know, showed he could sire. And, you know, he won the race, but Secretariat did not really turn out to be a phenomenal sire by any stretch of the imagination, even though he was a great horse. But that one, I remember Mike Maselli winning the Travers on Holding Pattern. You know, just so many over the years. But, you know, everybody talks about their wins, and I've had some big ones in the Travers. I had one of my worst beats ever in the Travers, ever, with a horse named Mambo in Seattle. Mambo in Seattle was ridden
All-time name, by the way.
by Robbie Alvarado, okay? And what happened was, all right, I was already living in Florida, and I went to Calder and singled Mambo in Seattle in a $20 pick 4. Better, and because I was betting at Calder and leaving, okay, I said, okay, well, in the event this horse doesn't win, I'm not alive at the pick 4, I'm not going to be there to do anything. I have to bet anyway. So I bet, I think, 600 to win on Mambo in Seattle too, and a bunch of exactas with Mambo in Seattle, $100 exactas with him on top, $150 exactas with him on top. I never reversed my exactas, as most of you probably know. So I go home to watch the race, and I call my dad, who lived a few minutes away from me in Florida. I was living in a condo on the beach on a Hillsborough Mile. And I said, listen, I need this Mambo in Seattle like bad. Now, back then, when I was gambling for a living, and I was all in, okay? If Mambo in Seattle didn't win, I was in trouble, because I was on, you know, doing bad, had a lot of expenses, and I was up and down big time back then. So I was all in, and my dad knew it, okay, and knew that I was kind of hurting and needed a score. And sure enough, I was alive in the pick 4. I don't remember what was coming back, but it was big. I had the win bets from Calder sitting on a table, and you know, I called my dad. Okay, the race was running, okay, and I was a little bit behind because I DVR'd it. So I was a little bit behind. My dad was watching it live because I came home from the races and started watching, and I was watching the show. So I was in a 10-minute lag, you know? And they hit the wire. Okay, now my dad already saw it. I said, whatever you do, don't call me. Let me watch the race myself. I'll call you. So he doesn't call me. They hit the wire, and Colonel John was on the rail with Garrett Gomez, and Mambo in Seattle come on the outside, and they hit the wire, and he nailed them. And I'm like, I got everything. I got the exacta, the pick 4 for $20. Robbie Alvarado fist pumps like this after they hit the wire. And I'm like, yes. So I called my dad, and I'm like, Joe, I always called my dad by his name, Giuseppe. And he's like, so down. He's like, yeah. I'm like, what's the matter? We won. He's like, no, we didn't. I'm like, what are you talking about? I just saw it. He goes, you didn't win. I'm like, what are you talking about? Let me call you back. Boom. So now I fast forward, you know what I mean? And Alvarado's coming back. They call Alvarado. They put Colonel John's number up. I never seen a worse photo, a worse I still, to this day.
I was about to say, because last week we were talking about that John Henry Arlington Million, and this is another example where every time I rewatch that race, I'm like, I don't know, man. Are you sure we took the photo at the right angle, man? I mean,
it's as close and as bad as John Henry the bought photo, and it meant everything to me. I don't even know how I recovered from that, to tell you the truth.
Wow.
It was a disaster, and it came at a really, really, really personal tough time in my life too. I was going through a living hell, and I really needed the money. But you know, horses will humble you. It was a really
That's
tough.
some story.
And my dad's voice, I couldn't understand it. I was like, "Why are you so sad? We won."
Yeah.
He was like, "Nah, we didn't win." I'm like, "Oh man,"
Wasn't-
I couldn't understand it. I was sure he got it, you know.
Wow.
I can imagine how Robbie Alvarado felt thinking he won the Travers and pumping
He's fist pumping. Wow.
at the wire. Like, I got it, you know. He didn't have it, I didn't have it, and it ain't over till it's over, man.
Let me ask you something, John. Wasn't there a race that went back? I guess it could be late 80s, early 90s. Like there was Jerry Bailey. It was a Travers that went down to the wire, noses apart, or heads apart. And during the race, there was a torrential rainstorm. And while they were in the paddock, there was a hailstorm. I don't want to break up the screen. I could look it up, but if you guys have access to it, there was one Travers that had a significant hailstorm while it was a hail.
The year Birdstone won.
Let me see. I don't want to distract the screen.
Yeah, because when you're saying early 90s, I mean, my first one goes to Holy Bowl, obviously, but I mean, I'm trying to think.
I'm trying to get the recollection, but I remember watching it.
Holy Bowl was a great one, and it definitely poured when Birdstone won. I mean, it was like nighttime before the race. Like that was probably the race.
Yeah, I don't have the precise recollection, but I'm thinking of that, and I remember the finish being a real gritty nail biter down to the wire, heads apart.
I don't remember if Birdstone was close that year or not, but there's been so many, you know. That's why I thought that, you know, Arrogant running the fastest one ever was really noteworthy, because when you think back over 100 years of history of the best 3-year-olds, and like Gio said earlier, by the time they hit the Travers, they're already seasoned and kind of grown up a little bit. It's a little different than the Derby. So to run the fastest one ever, when you think of how many, you know, great horses have run 1.25 miles over the Saratoga track over 100 years, that was impressive. You know, that was
really is. Because I mean, this is almost a stallion. This is really a stallion making race. I mean, you look down the list of basically the top 3 finishers in the Travers, you're seeing stallions that are in this race. You know what I mean?
And this year we have the 2-year-old champion, Essential Quality, off. I mean, he's the only bad, and not even a bad race. The only race he lost was the Kentucky Derby, which we know is an easy race to forgive. The best horse often doesn't win the Derby, and he's coming in off the Belmont Stakes win and the Jim Dandy win, and he's going to be, I would say, 4 to 5.
Well, he'll be odds on. There's 0 chance that he goes off at even money or better. There's no way.
Well, why don't we start? We'll run down the field. We'll each give our opinion of all. There are only 7 horses in here, so we'll each give our opinion of each one. We'll say whether we think they're a contender or a pretender, and then we'll circle back and we'll all say how we're going to play it and how we're going to attack the Travers on Saturday. Gio, let's start with you and Midnight Bourbon.
All right, I'll start it off, guys. Obviously, number 1 horse being on the rail. A major rider change. We know about Ricardo Santana's relationship with Steve Asmussen, who ironically, and we all know that Steve Asmussen became the leading trainer in thoroughbred racing history recently. For him not to have this on his resume, the Travers, right off the bat, that's very intriguing. So the warrant here for Santana to get in the reins for Asmussen in this race. When I look at Midnight Bourbon, one of the things I had mentioned to you, John, in conversation, and Mike, I think you'll find this interesting. All right. Not only is he, and I mentioned this to John, when I saw Asmussen walk in Midnight Bourbon out of the paddock onto the track at the Kentucky Derby, I was absolutely in awe over his imposing size.
It's a good looking horse.
He's a well-built, monstrous looking animal. And I saw him firsthand when I attended the Haskell here down the Jersey Shore. A beautiful colt. So when I look at everything that Midnight Bourbon's going, everything that he's done going into this race, I want to point out a couple of things. First of all, I think he's working pretty well at Saratoga. The last race you put a line through. I think Paco Lopez didn't give him the best of rides at the Haskell, and we all know what happened. He clipped heels, and ultimately he lost the rider. He didn't get the opportunity to compete down the stretch. But going into that race, what I felt was compelling. In the race that Rombauer closed and won, the Preakness, I really felt the bid that he was making and the duel that he was facing again. One of the things about Midnight Bourbon is that he's a tough, gritty competitor. He has had more duels, more fights in the stretch during this campaign, his 3-year-old campaign, than anybody else in the field, maybe with the exception to Essential Quality. We'll get into that later. So I see Midnight Bourbon being comfortable in the 1 hole. The only time he broke from the rail was at Fairgrounds in the LeConte. I think it's the LeConte, a grade 3 race, right?
Yep.
He got the lead. He was in a comfort zone. Sure, that was only a mile and a 16th, but he coasted to victory. And that was sort of way down the foundation for his campaign, because I believe that was his first start off a layoff coming into that race. So I see Midnight Bourbon setting moderate fractions, almost very similar to how Gary Stevens ran Oxbow in 2013 at the Preakness. And if Midnight Bourbon can get out, find that comfort zone, not having to eyeball and battle, I think if the half is high 47 or low 48, I think he's a contender and a big threat to defeat Essential Quality if the fractions are suited. So that's how I run down Midnight Bourbon. I'm really looking forward to hear what you guys have to say.
So I don't have to ask, you say he's a contender for sure.
Absolute contender.
Mike?
So here's my problem with Midnight Bourbon. You talked about the history of this race, and what's really cool about this race is you're always looking for the horse that's an improving 3-year-old. Like, it's coming onto the scene, maybe wasn't top niche for the Derby, and so on. With Midnight Bourbon, we saw great, consistent speed figure progression right about till we got to the LeComte. And then after the LeComte, it's just been very consistent, upper 90s, mid 90s buyers. And I think that's kind of who Midnight Bourbon is. He does avoid the big hitters. How Rod Charlie's not in this race. We don't have some of the Mandaloon and some of the others. He does have to beat Essential Quality. And my problem is I don't think Midnight Bourbon is the one getting the lead. So I'll talk about who I think is going to get the lead, but I'll just say now, I think Masqueparade is going to get the lead. And that's my problem is I agree with you that if he gets an uncontested lead, that he has an absolute shot to win the race. But my other knock against him is this will now be his 8th different jockey. I think that's always been a bad sign to me. It means that jockeys have a hard time figuring out this horse, that Asmus isn't comfortable with how these people have been riding him. I don't know. And especially, I'm surprised he was this low of a price, to be honest. I was expecting more than 9-2. I think we'll probably get it on race day, but I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well,
I think 9-2 is probably realistic. I think he's going to get a lot of respect come race day, and I respect him a lot.
Yeah.
So are you saying he's a contender or a pretender?
No, I mean, it's a weird one because I just don't think he's going to get the lead. I think they're going to give it up to Mena and Masqueparade. So
you're going to say pretender.
So I'm going to say pretender. Yeah. And again, it's just, I think it's a very talented horse. And I think this will be a very good, like midsummer Derby horse, but yeah, not the Travers for me.
Well, let me add something to that, Mike, because interestingly enough, and I certainly respect your opinion in terms of what you're saying, but I've watched Midnight Bourbon, the replay of every one of his races. I've gotten to know the horse. He had a major excuse in the Kentucky Derby. Okay.
No question there.
There's questions about whether he wants the distance or not. The reason why Asmussen is turning to his main guy, Santana, here, because he's gone through a series of what I felt jockey inadequacies. I mean, Joe Talamo, what Mike Smith did in the Kentucky Derby is different. He never had a shot in the Derby. But Talamo, on a couple occasions, I felt didn't get as much out of Midnight Bourbon as he should have.
No,
So the
agreed.
test here is, if he's comfortable in the lead, the vision I have is the way Gary Stevens, I know it's hard to compare the two, but I'm remembering the Preakness when Orb was a major favorite and Gary Stevens took Orb out. He was comfortable in the lead. So the only time I saw Midnight Bourbon comfortable, not battling, just comfortable, was in that grade 3 race, albeit it was mile and 16. But I think he's got the guts, and I think he's got a lot left because he wasn't used up at Monmouth at the Haskell.
And that's very true. And I will say this: there is no speed in this race whatsoever, like none.
Correct.
So again, I think it's either you're right or I'm right. One of our horses will get the
okay.
lead.
Yeah. Now,
And
interestingly enough, you mentioned Masqueparade. I thought he's got early foot, but I just feel he's just and we'll get into him when we talk about Masqueparade later. I just don't think he's got he's a little cheaper in a way. He's a nice colt. I just don't think he's at the class. I'm certainly, from the 1 hole, there's no question in my mind that Midnight Bourbon is not only going to have the lead, but he's going to have a comfortable lead, not by a wide margin. I'm talking about a relaxed horse who's going to be ready to fire. When he gets through the back stretch and around the far turn, he's going to still be in a very competitive tactical advantage.
Yeah. You're basically looking for him to repeat the LeCompte, right? Basically that 1 length to half length late around the back stretch and then laying it on late.
Yeah, because and we're going to get into Essential Quality, who's going to be right on his doorstep. You know, Essential Quality is going to be out there. He's only going to be 2, 3, maybe 4 lengths back. He's not going to be buried. So John, did you share with us whether you think he's a contender or not?
Not yet.
Okay, let's hear from you now.
I definitely think he's a major contender, and he might come race time be my top choice, believe it or not. I think not like you, Michael. I think he gets the lead for sure from the rail. I think Santana is an aggressive jockey, is not going to be afraid to gun. I think he's
not more aggressive than Paco though.
I think he is actually. I think
really.
I think he is.
Oh man.
I think he is more aggressive than Paco, and I think that he's flat out faster to the half mile than Masqueparade. Masqueparade. Let me pronounce that horse's name correctly. Masqueparade.
I literally cannot. It's one of my horses that I like in the race, and I literally can't pronounce it.
Flat out faster. So I think from the rail with
Masqueparade, yeah.
He's going to have the lead. I'd say by a length and a half. You know, maybe even 2 lengths wouldn't surprise me. And one of the things that'll play heavy in my, game time decision as to whether or not he's my top choice will be how the track is playing. If the track is souped up and very fast and speed is winning and it's a speed-friendly racetrack, I will upgrade him and as a good shot, he could be my top choice. But from the inside, from the rail, with that long run down the stretch the first time into the clubhouse turn, I think he's got the lead. I think he can go 46, 3, 46 and 4, 47, 47 and change, depending on how they go to the half. I think if they go 48, forget about it. He's going to be a handful to reel in. And I think he's absolutely a contender. I know Santana's never ridden him before, but I know he's gotten on him in the morning. He knows him well. And I have 2 concerns about him. One is, even though he came off the pace in the Preakness, well, not really off the pace, he pressed the pace in the Preakness with Irad, but he did take the lead by a length and a half clear in the stretch and couldn't hold Rombor off, who I don't think is this level of horse. So that's a concern that he couldn't hold that horse off. My other concern is that, is he okay mentally after what happened in the Haskell? Sometimes an incident like that can get in a horse's head and they don't try, they don't extend themselves, they don't want to go,
That's a good point, John. That's a good point.
Fight, you know what I mean, on the rail. If somebody comes outside of him, they may get a little, lack of a better term, a little chicken. So, is he mentally all right? Now, Steve Asmussen is a fantastic trainer, and he's got the luxury of having a shed row full of good horses to school this horse with and get his confidence back with. In a small barn, that could be more of an issue than it would be in a barn like Steve's. But those are my only two concerns about him. Otherwise, I think he's a major player in the Travers, and it would, we talk about stories and history, and Gio likes to go into this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think it affects the race, but I wouldn't be surprised if Steve wins the Travers and gets his Travers win on the year that he broke the record of.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I wanted to add to what John just said. Don't forget, fellas, what I was saying about his imposing way. This horse is a physical specimen. Steve Asmussen actually felt very confident about his chances running for the Roses in May. The horse just had an absolute horror trip. What's that?
One of the things I like about him that I didn't mention is, in the Derby, he had a horrendous start and wound up in the back of the field. And that's not his way of running. And he still ran, in what my opinion, a credible race. I don't think he ran a bad race in the Kentucky Derby at all, especially considering the kind of trip that he had. And he actually got a good number on Thoroughgraph in the Derby for the kind of trip.
And John, in the Preakness, Ron Bauer, he just ran into a lightning bolt. Ron Bauer ran a career race that race.
I know, but
he finished well. He had a lot left. He just wasn't the better horse that day. And Ron Bauer had a perfect trip. So
let's move on to Essential Quality.
Okay,
I'll start with him. Okay. We'll change the order up a little bit. Essential Quality, 7 for 8. He's got a win over the track, which I think is very important at Saratoga. Historically, if you look at Travers winners, horses that have won over the track tend to do very, very, very well. Years ago, it was the Jim Dandy that was the only prep. Now you've got the Curlin and the Jim Dandy to pull from. But my thought is this, and if I could find a nick in his armor, this might be it. I thought that coming out of the Belmont Stakes, where it's a 1.5 miles, is a grueling race. Yes, he edged away from Hot Rod Charlie late, but Hot Rod Charlie is a runner. He gave him a tussle in the stretch, and he really had to get into him to kind of put Hot Rod Charlie.
Oh, it's one of the great races of the year so far. It was awesome.
And he did. Then he comes back, in what's supposed to be an easy prep. And it didn't go that way at all. He was wide all the way around. Saez really had to ride him for about 1/2 mile, which is a long way to have to get down on a horse. And he was all in to, beat Keepmeinmind and the horse whose name we can't get right. So I thought that, a horse like this can go two ways. He can get a much better trip on Saturday, not have to go wide. Everything falls in his lap, and he goes forward off that race and, haha, I'm the best 3-year-old, and I did it again. And that could easily happen. But the flip side of that coin to me is at 4 to 5 or maybe even 3 to 5. I don't want any nicks, okay? I don't want any questions. If I'm going to take a 3 to 5 shot in the Travers, I want a single. I want to be all in, and I don't want to have anything to worry about. I want to think in my mind.
You want American Pharoah.
Right. And I think he can definitely show some wear and tear in the stretch of the Travers because of the Belmont and that hard race in the Jim Dandy catching up with him. Because contrary to what a lot of handicappers think, I do not believe horses are machines and they do the same thing every time you put them in the gate. So I'm waiting for that regression, and I'm willing to take a chance that maybe we see that on Saturday after that prep race that I don't think went the way that they would have liked to have seen it go. Contender, I can't say he's a pretender, obviously, but he's a contender that I'm going to probably bet against.
Yeah, it's this one's tough for me because, like, obviously we all think his last race wasn't the best, but I kind of saw it the opposite, John. I I saw that as overcoming a huge bounce situation.
I thought he overcame a lot too, but I just think it's going to take its toll now.
And it very well could. And that's where I'm struggling, right? Because this is the 6th race in 7 months, and the 5 races prior were grueling. Had to get asked for a lot. But man, if he was going to lose a race, I thought it was going to be that last one, and he still somehow did it. The form says he was 3-4 wide. I don't know, man. I thought he was at least 5 wide in that first turn, and he didn't get much closer to the rail after that. So I don't know what the actual number came out of how much ground he traveled, but it was insane. He was much the best in that race, despite
he run a 1 negative. He run a 1 negative on Thoroughgraph, which is the same number he ran in the Belmont win.
Exactly. And it was the perfect bounce situation, if you believe in that, which we know, at least on this show, we certainly do. He's never not fired. It's just, it's hard for me the only way I can see him losing is exactly what Gio just said, is one horse gets to an easy lead. And it turns out just like the Kentucky Derby, where at 1.25 miles, the 4 horses that turn for home fill out your superfecta, and that's it.
Could be. Gio, your thoughts on the 2-year-old champ?
Yeah, I'm busting. I've been a big fan. I've actually adored this horse. As a juvenile, he was flawless.
Yeah.
He was unbeaten as a juvenile. He won convincingly. He laid off. He came back and fired his first start in a slop as a 3-year-old, and he hasn't looked back. He, rightfully speaking, he could be 8 for 8. We all know his only flaw was in the Kentucky Derby. And in that race, he ran a very brave, gutty, gritty race. And one of the words that I always, I put synonymous with essential quality is that he lives with that hard-hitting attitude. He's a game horse. Every horse I ever bet on, regardless of the level of race, but especially if they're in grade 1s, he's been game every single race.
He's fighting for your ticket,
Exactly. He's a fighter. So the way I see this race panning out, if the half is 46 and a half or less, essential quality is going to win the race. He's probably going to be in a great position. But if it's 48, high 47, low 48, special middle 48, the tactical advantage is going to be Midnight Bourbon. And that's why I feel like he's going to have lasting potential. And he's probably the #1 possible upsetter of essential quality. But you can't look at this race and feel comfortable about leaving essential quality out of the exacta, because you don't have a big field. You got 7 horses. He's going to be tactical. He's not going to be as far back as some of the other colts in the race, which we'll get into. He's going to be in good position. Of course, you got Luis Saez, the leading rider, who is actually, he's riding with conviction now. He's got a chip on his back right now. He really does. Riding with great confidence too. So John made a great point. He had to bust his hump in the Jim Dandy. And when you run the Belmont Stakes, which, by the way, the Belmont Stakes was one for the ages. He ran a 109 buyer. Hot Rod Charlie gave every bit of his guts and grit that he had. And essential quality took the 1.5 miles. He says, you know what? I'm the best 3-year-old in the country. I'm winning this race.
Yep.
And I made a lot of money on that race. When my column, I had essential quality Hot Rod. I didn't think anybody else could finish that race. I wrote off Rock This World. So the race panned out as I saw it. So now I look at essential quality in this race, the gritty game guy, 3-year-old champ, 2-year-old champ. This is his race to lose, but I think he can be beat if the pace is right. And I can't leave him out of the exacta with any kind of logic. So he's first to second in my book.
Yeah, it's really hard to go ahead.
I might leave him out.
Interesting, John.
Well, the problem is, John, is you got so many closers in this race, and he's clearly the best one, right? So if there is pace to run into,
he's got him stalking or chasing the pace, then he's not going to be a closer. Let
me make one more point. One more point, guys. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good.
His work August 14th, that 59-2 breeze is a sensational work. Then Brad Cox has him still keep his workout where he runs 5 furlongs in the mud. Still 101 and 2 breezy. He's showing fitness. He has a race over the track.
Yeah.
He's done everything the connections have asked for. He's done not only a mile and a quarter, he's done a mile and a half. So it's his race to lose. Yes, I'm repeating myself. He can be beat if the fractions are soft. If they're fast, he's the most likely winner.
Okay.
No argument here.
Mr. Vale, keep me in mind. What do you think?
Pretender. I don't think he has any chance to win this race. Definitely improving. I mean, definitely improved in his last two races, but man, he got the perfect trip in the Jim Dandy, and he couldn't run down Essential Quality, who had a lot against him. And I gotta tell you, man, every time I watch that replay, I really think he fouled Masqueparade in the stretch. I can't believe that horse didn't get taken down. He's a very fun horse to watch, but even when he's gone to places where he should have won, you know, the Ohio Derby, the Bluegrass, the Rebel. I mean, where he's not always going against the best horses. I don't know. I think it was a good race last race, but he got the perfect trip. He's not gonna Essential Quality is not nearly gonna get as bad of a trip in this race. So I just, for a deep closer, which Keepmeinmind certainly will be, he's not going to get the jump on Essential Quality and a couple other these horses that are going to be closer to the pace.
What do you think, Gio?
You know, I'm actually listing him as a contender, and I'll tell you why. If the pace, very good points by Mike, by the way, because it lends itself to his history. One of the things I was intrigued by, Keepmeinmind, and you got to give credit to Diodoro, because as much as David Cohen rides for him, he knows he's got Rosario in the silks. I think Rosario upgraded this horse's ability in the Jim Dandy. If you watch the race, he rode with great confidence. He did get a perfect trip. And obviously Essential Quality wasn't at his best, but I like his progression. I can't rule him a pretender if I see his buyers and his growth, the way he's developed as a 3-year-old. He's always been like sort of like a plotter, you know, coming late, trying, but not really having the guts to run big in stretch runs. If you look at the last few races, the Preakness, the Ohio Derby, and the Jim Dandy, he seemed to take it to another level. Is he a win contender? The race would have to collapse entirely, and he'd have to have a great trip again. Because of Rosario, I gotta give him the respect. He's probably going to be hitting the board third or fourth money. But if the race under perfect circumstances, the fact that he has a nice work over the track, he's run at Saratoga in the Jim Dandy.
Oh, he's firing bullets left and right, man. It's wild to see his work.
Yeah, he's working well. He's fit. I know he can make the distance. Even though he hasn't hit the board in his 2 tries at the distance. I just think he's better now than he was earlier in the year. So I got to give him the contending label.
I'm going to say pretender. I think he's a nice horse, but I think he's a cut below a couple of the ones in here that are established. And I think he might be a cut below 1 or 2 in here that are not yet established and may be established after Saturday. I think he comes from well off the pace. And we've discussed and seem to be in agreement that there's not an abundance of speed in the race. There's maybe 2 speed horses and maybe a lone speed, be it the horse that Michael likes on the lead or the horse that Gio and I like on the lead. So, you know,
it is weird for how fast this horse can work out that they haven't tried yet to push this horse out of the gate. It really surprises me.
I don't think he can take a horse like this out of his game at all. I think he's a 1-run off the pace kind of horse.
Yeah.
And if you look, he's been working good before. I mean, he's worked good and worked fast before, you know what I mean? So it's not like all of a sudden now he's, you know, the light bulb went off and he's working fast. He's been working fast and hasn't won. You know, I just got him a cut below some of the major contenders in here. So I'm going to say pretender. Of course, it's a 7-horse field. He can obviously get into the triple or even the exacta. But I'm talking about for win.
Yeah, in my opinion, he's been beaten so many times by Essential Quality. It just doesn't make any sense that he'll turn the tables on that colt.
Yeah.
So but he has improved. I'm impressed with the way his willingness and his buyers, he's running faster races. He seems to be more consistent. He's not going to have traffic issues because Rosario, he's a strong arm, confident rider. I just see him coming down the lane, but he's going to be a little belatedly. He's going to be a little late. He's my pick to run third in this race.
Yeah, you can almost key him there for sure. I mean, I have a trifecta bet in this race, and he's definitely on that third slot for me. So
let's move to Dynamic One. Gio, thoughts?
Okay, I'll start off with Dynamic One. The one thing that came to my mind immediately, I always like to, I like to look at the horse's progression during the course of the year. And Dynamic One made me think of Keen Ice in a way. The way Keen Ice ran as a 3-year-old, and of course he came on to eventually win the Travers over American Pharaoh. I have a high regard respect for Todd Pletcher. I don't think he would put him in this race if he felt like he wouldn't run well. If you look at Dynamic One's last race, it's so significantly improved over his resume. I don't think it's his best race. I think he's got another one coming to him. $725,000 yielding purchase. I don't really want to talk too much about his Wood effort. I didn't like the Wood Memorial. I knew Bourbon and Dynamic One would falter in a Kentucky Derby, and they did. The first thing I did after the Wood, I said, both these horses, they're complete throwouts in a Kentucky Derby. But what this horse did in the curling over the track, a little dampness, it was a good track. But for Todd Pletcher to have him improve at such a level, that wasn't the biggest field. It wasn't the best, the greatest field. But the horse ran with conviction. Irad Ortiz in the saddle. His works are, less to be desired. I thought he'd work a little faster. But remember, it's his second race off a layoff. I think he's another one of those that he's going to be making his presence felt in this stretch run. Whether he'll pass Keep Me in Mind. It's going to be a battle with Irad and Rosario as to who's going to look to get to Essential Quality or Midnight Bourbon first. So he'll be my last contender. I can't throw him out entirely. I think he's sitting on a big race. He's got the pedigree to go to distance. I'm not worried about the 1.25 miles here. And if he gets room, he's gonna be a menace in the stretch. But I don't think good enough to win. A menace to hit the bottom gimmicks, triple superfecta.
Mr. Vale.
Yeah, I struggled with this one because on paper I should like this horse. The problem is, watching that curling, I'm shocked how and I use buyers quite a bit, but they have their limits, and that eye test really didn't look like a 97 buyer to me. I thought they were passing some tired horses more than they were making their run. And my main reason is I after digging into Miles D a little more, the horse he beat in that curling, I really didn't like Miles D. So if I don't like Miles D, it's hard for me to like Dynamic One. So I'll talk more about Miles D when we get to him. It's just Pletcher. I don't blame Pletcher for putting this horse in. I think he's got a great chance, similar to Keep Me in Mind, to pick up a piece of such a great race like this, such an expensive race. But yeah, as for a win contender, I don't see it with Dynamic One.
Well, I'll go into Dynamic One, and then I'll start us off with Miles D because, well, you'll understand why in a minute. But when I watched the curling stakes, a friend of mine I talked to right after the race, and he's like, "What did you think of that?" And I said, "I'll tell you what." I said, "I would be very surprised if these horses run back against each other in the Travers. I think Miles D will beat Dynamic One next time." He's like, "Why? Beat him so easy?" Well, I'll explain to you why. And this will tie into both of these horses. Dynamic One came from behind Miles D that day. Miles D made a big wide move. Actually looked like he might win the race for a couple of strides. And then Dynamic One just unleashed the the field parted like the Red Sea parted.
Yep.
He just went right through, loaded up for bear off the layoff. Okay, on an off track that was a little kind to his style of running. Now with that, I liked Miles D because he was a very green, lightly raced horse where Dynamic One had a lot of seasoning. Dynamic One ran a big race in the Wood Memorial, had been to the Kentucky Derby. Miles D had one start this year, okay? Broke his maiden going a one-turn mile, got thrown to the wolves in a 1.125 two-turn curling, and ran a respectable race, okay? And lost to a much more seasoned horse when he moved a lot wider, covered a lot more ground, and didn't have that seasoning. First time, 2 turns, first time stake right out of the maiden. Makes all the sense in the world to me for this horse to develop and go forward much more significantly than a horse like Dynamic One, who was supposed to beat him that day and did. I'm going to call Dynamic One, especially with the pace set up the way we discussed, with not a lot of speed, a pretender. But I'm going to call Miles D a very dangerous long shot contender. He loses Rosario, but he picks up Prat. Prat is making all the right moves, be it at Del Mar, be it at Belmont, be it at Saratoga. I don't be in next week. It'll be at Kentucky Downs. Doesn't matter where. This guy's riding in the zone. Okay, he's riding a lot for Chad Brown. Everybody wants to get in that barn, and when you do, you don't want to mess up. It's a small field. He's had his race out of the maiden to get accustomed to the big boys, get the feel of the big boys. Said, you know what? I ran here. I ran second. I belong with this kind of horse. He's got a pattern on Thoroughgraph to me that suggests can go forward again. And I think with that race under his belt, I think he's going to move before the deep closes like Dynamic One. And I think he may even move before Essential Quality. So I have him as a contender, and him and Midnight Bourbon right now are vying for my quote top choice attention, believe it or not. So I like Long Shot a lot. I think he's live. He will definitely be a horse that I am using, and I think he's very, very, very dangerous with a lot of upside. And I like his last race as much, or if not more, than Dynamic Ones. And I watched that replay about 3 or 4 times, because the interesting thing is after I said that, my friend made me rethink it, and I went back and watched it. I said, gee, maybe I'm nuts. This horse exploded. But then I really dissected the pace and everything, and really, watched it again very objectively. And like I said, he was supposed to win that day. I don't think he's supposed to win on Saturday. I think Miles D makes a big move forward.
Yeah, Miles D is such a, like, on paper, I love this type of horse coming in the race where you get great buyer improvements each race. It's Chad, who is not usually this aggressive, particularly with his dirt horses. I mean, you said it, John, coming out of a maiden, going directly to stakes at Saratoga, clearly has a prep race for here, and then goes to the grade 1 Travers after losing that race. And then Prat flies all the way here just to ride Miles D.
No, he's riding horses all over.
No. In fairness, but like obviously the Travers is the race that we're shooting for on Travers Day, right? He's a curling. He should love the more distance, and he's almost a $500,000 purchase. Improving 3-year-old. I should love this horse, but I just don't. I mean, he's only won one race, and in that race he beats 6 horses. Only one of those have come back to win. And it was the horse that got 5th in that race. It was a horse named Vindictive. And the rest of them have had multiple tries to try to win. And then I'm just assuming that the buyer number in his last race is real. Right. And even if it is real, he has to, I don't think there's a chance that Essential Quality runs below a 99 in this race. Right. So you're now, I'm projecting that Miles D is going to run over 100 buyer in his first, and he's yet to beat winners. I don't know, man. And maybe I'll look foolish because I just didn't pick a 12-1 Prat and Brown horse improving 3-year-old. Again, on paper looks great. I don't think his maiden win was that good, and I'm not sold on this curling, to be honest with you. So I agree with you, John, that he is projecting. You could project improvement, and I would definitely pick him over Dynamic One. In fact, I'm probably going to use Miles D in my trifecta, but no, as a win contender, I think as a pretender.
What's your take on Miles D, Gio?
All right. You guys made a lot of good points, and I've been busting to share a few of mine with this guy. First things first, obviously, one race is a juvenile. They lay him off. He doesn't win his debut. He's sort of well bet. Speaker's Corner ran a big race this year. So the horse he ran against at Belmont is juvenile, was Speaker's Corner, who came back and won a big race this year. But
Caddo River was second. He's no slouch either, the horse that was second, Caddo
exactly. So, but he comes back at Belmont after a long layoff.
Greatest Honor was third in that race, who won the race in Florida.
Yeah, absolutely. So he's faced some good company in his early part of his career, but this is the Travers Stakes. We talked about the history. 3 races in, 1 is a juvenile, 2 is a 3-year-old. It's his 3rd race off the layoff. I was impressed with his significant improvement in the curling. I watched the race several times too. As the form says, he was willing. I think he could actually been the better horse that day. But to ask him to beat these gritty game 3-year-old seasoned veterans now, like Essential Quality and Midnight Bourbon, will he improve? I believe he would. But the way Chad Brown is on this crazy, and as we record this, Chad Brown won 5 races yesterday, and I believe 3 more today. 8 wins at Saratoga in 2 days. But by the way, Chad Brown, I was on him with Highly Motivated at the Kentucky Derby. He failed me that day. He didn't have the best trip, but now my reality is I don't think Highly Motivated is a 1.25 mile horse. He belongs in this race. He lost Rosario, as John mentioned, but I know Rosario very well. And if he felt that he was on a tiger here, a tiger that was going to get loose in the Travers, I think he would have stayed the course. I don't think he would have. I think he would have jumped off. Keep me in mind. So that's telling me,
especially because he gets a lot more mounts from Brown than he does from Diodoro.
Correct. So he sided with Diodoro, and he went with Keep Me in Mind, who's an extremely seasoned horse, as I spoke about before. So I see Miles D improving again, and Prat he makes all the right moves. I like the jockey change because they couldn't use Rosario. But against this field Saturday, even with improvement, and I'm glad you mentioned it, Mike, I see Essential Quality being very high 90s, if not 100, 102, 103 in a buyer. And if he runs back to that, the only horse, in my opinion, that could beat him at that number is Midnight Bourbon if he got loose on the lead, because he has that tactical advantage.
Yeah.
An advantage which I think is substantial over Masqueparade. So unfortunately, as much as I totally respect what John was saying, he's going to have me a little concerned on race day because I respect his opinion.
Yeah.
Even with improvement, I think if Miles D runs his race, the best he's going to do is get 3rd money. So I can't have him over the 1 and the 2 in this race.
Well, you got him as a pretender.
To win, yeah, pretender to win. An exotic's chance, no doubt, because others may not fire.
Fair enough. We got to kind of move because we're going on an hour and people are going to be shutting us off saying these people take.
Right. All right, we only got 2 left.
So we'll
right.
But one thing I want to add real quick is only because you mentioned the Rosario thing. Billy Shoemaker, you heard of him, right?
Of course.
He was a pretty cerebral jockey, wasn't he?
Absolutely. One of the best ever.
When he had the choice to ride Hill Rise or Northern Dancer in the Kentucky Derby, who'd he pick? Hill Rise.
Yeah, it was, Hill Rise.
Who won? Northern Dancer.
Northern Dancer.
Okay, I'll give you
one of the great sires of all time. Yeah.
Okay, Eddie Arcaro, one of the best ever. Okay, one of the best ever. This is a true story. I'm not making this up. Guy asked him, a reporter asked him, Eddie, if you were not a jockey, what would you have liked to have been for your career? And Eddie Arcaro went, that's a really good question. You know what? If I wasn't a jockey, I would have wanted to been the bookie in the jocks room. I'll leave it at that, okay?
Yeah.
Ron Anderson,
I think
Rosario's agent, is pretty sharp.
But I am with you on this one. I think that's more of the exception than the rule. I think those caliber jockeys, I'll say 70-30, make the right decision.
Yeah, I would tend to disagree.
One race as a juvenile, two as a 3-year-old. I can't use him.
Yeah. I mean, the only horse I could think that's come close to winning with that path is really Arrogate.
The other thing is, and I do believe this, and I
He
should
at least
say,
beat some winners.
I should say this in fairness. I think that when Rosario gave the call to Diodoro to ride Keep Me in Mind, I think it was a 2-race call. I think it was for the Curlin and the Travers, and he was committed.
Yeah.
I don't think the Jim Dandy and the Travers. I don't think that it was a decision like that. I think that was a 2-race call. I'm not sure of that, but I have a good idea that that's what happened. But anyway, let's move it along, because if not, we're gonna get people are gonna hang up on us. Masqueparade, Gio, what do you think?
Masqueparade. I'll be pretty quick with Masqueparade. Nice colt by Upstart. I respect the jock. He's been with him ever since he was a juvenile. He ran 1 race as a juvenile, fired right into his 3-year-old campaign. I have lots of respect for Albert Stall, but against this field, even though his bias has improved, he's been in the 90s his last 3. If he didn't win or get it done in the Jim Dandy, I just can't see him beating these colts in the Travers. So he's a toss for me. Unfortunately, I can't kiss all the boys. I can't kiss all the girls. He's a throwout. He's a total pretender. He can't win this race, and he's not as fast as Midnight Bourbon. So I think he's going to be passed along the far turn. He'll make an early presence. I think he'll sit 2 behind Midnight Bourbon, get passed by Essential Quality, and fold.
Fair enough. Thoughts, Mr. Vail?
Yeah. So, I mean, and I might look foolish on race day, but this is my pick. I think Masqueparade has a really good chance to make the lead. If he doesn't, I don't have a really big problem with that. He's shown the ability to duel and still have, game it right at the end to win a race. So I think there's no chance he's outside the top 2 going down the back stretch. And I got to tell you, man, I encourage all of the listeners to watch the head on of his last race in that Jim Dandy. At minimum, gets pinched horribly by both horses, but I really think Rosario fouled him. I mean, I thought Keep Me in Mind really cut him off coming into his lane down the stretch. And you can see Masqueparade kind of had to step back a little bit. He tried to re-rally on the outside. He did a little bit, but it just, when you have all that momentum coming down the lane and you get shut out like that, I think the race was better than it looked on paper. And I think Albert Stall's was pointing to the Travers with this horse. You don't send somebody to the Jim Dandy without having this race in mind. And he took a very slow, measured progression. I think he could be sitting on a really big race. I don't think the Ohio Derby was the goal with this horse. I really think it was the Travers. And except for Essential Quality, there's no big monsters in here. I think he has every chance to win. I think you might get a better price than 8-1 on race day for all the points that Gio made. There are some knocks you can put against this horse.
Interesting. I was against him. I think he's a nice colt. I think he's a pretender in the Travers. I don't think he wants a 1.25 miles, and I don't think he's going to get the lead. I think that Midnight Bourbon's going to get the lead, and he's going to be chasing Midnight Bourbon and not be able to get him and get discouraged and back up. He would be a surprise to me. I respect Al Stall, and I respect Miguel Mena, and I respect Miguel Mena's agent, my friend Joe Santos, who I would love to see win the Travers from a friendship point. Right, he was on the show with us. He's a great guy. Would love to see him win.
And Miguel, you're right, doesn't get a ton of credit, but he can ride with the big boys.
On that point, I thought it was amazing. I love loyalty because I'm a loyalty type of guy.
Yeah,
staying with Mena when Javier Castellano, a 6-time winner, is available. He stayed with his guy. He's been with him since he began his career.
He really did. No, and he's shown the ability to win at multiple different tracks. I mean, this is a game horse, guys. The question is he fast enough, right?
He is
don't know.
fast. He is fast enough. On Thoroughgraph, he's fast enough. I just don't think a mile and a quarter is going to be his best game, and I don't like the trip that I see him getting. If he gets the trip that you see him getting, that could be another.
Yeah. And the other thing I like too is, to his inside and to his outside, both horses that are going to drop back. So I think he's going to be able to get out of that gate, cut over, and Essential Quality might actually try to go towards the lead. So I'm not sure that Midnight Bourbon won't have to fight with Essential Quality a little bit on the inside. Masqueparade will have to fight nobody. He's just going to fly out there.
Mike, I wanted to add one other thing. I watched all of this horse's races too, Masqueparade. I just felt like he should have graduated. When a horse runs as a juvenile in December, he should have been so advanced with his development. It took him so long to graduate. And then that optional claimer, nothing to write home about. He wasn't even odds on in that race. It was a weak field. He did beat them badly from the 10 hole. I just think he's developing, but he's outclassed by many in the field. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, fair enough. But I mean,
I don't think
that with a lot of the horses in this race, because Midnight Bourbon broke his second out at Ellis Park for 46. So I mean, I'm with you. And again, like I wouldn't bet this horse at 2-1. Like not about, but I think I'm going to get about 10 to 12 on this horse. And to me, the only way to bet this race is really Essential Quality, or you pick the horse that you think will be on the lead. And you're right. If it's Midnight Bourbon, I think he's got a great shot. So
I don't think that Masqueparade.
I really can't say this horse's name. I'm sorry.
I'm going to say it so you guys know it. It's Masqueparade.
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 I don't think that Masqueparade or Essential Quality are fast enough to tussle early with Midnight Bourbon. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't think either one is.
Tell you, guys, the image of Oxbow and Gary Stevens in the 2013 Preakness. Watch it when you're done with this roundtable. Watch that race. If Midnight Bourbon does what Gary Stevens did that day,
table, I'm going to have breakfast.
What's that?
No question.
King Fury. Let's
move on to King Fury.
That's good.
Ken Mcpeak is ice cold. He's 1 for 25 at the meet. Swiss skydiver, his big horse didn't come through for him. I think she runs on Saturday earlier on the card. Maybe he'll be 2 for 26 by the time they run to Travers. He's very good with the turf to dirt move. And if you look at the last 2 races on the dirt, the Ohio Derby, this horse ran good. The Lexington and the Slop, he ran good. He's going to be closing from far back. I don't like the pace scenario for him. I don't think he's as good as some of the other horses. I'm going to call him a pretender, but Mcpeak, for some reason, has fooled me before with horses that I don't think are good enough or fast enough to win. The most recent one being in the Alabama 2 or 3 years ago. I forget the horse's name, but he won the Alabama 2 or 3 years ago with a horse that I was sure was too slow to win the race, and she just exploded at the mile and a quarter and won. So he's fooled me before, but I don't think he's going to fool me on Saturday with King Fury. Pretender.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one, John. I mean, this horse is the opposite of Masqueparade. I mean, 0 speed. McPeak this wasn't a planned race by any means. I mean, we're going from the Lexington to the Ohio Derby. We're going to go to the Grade 1 turf race. And now we're throwing him back in the Travers. I mean, I think McPeak, this is a crazy placement by him. I will
say something. The Dam, if you remember, Therese, the Dam was a monster. Sprinter, but a monster.
Oh, no question. No question.
And he's a very good point. He's by curling as well. Let me share. Are you guys ready? Can I offer my opinion on King Fury?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
First of all, he's named after the big heavyweight champ from Australia, King Fury, based on the heavyweight champ. That's where he gets his name from.
Very cool.
Ken Mcpeak, if I have my history right, I think he won the Travers the day there was a dead heat. Right? There was a dead heat.
Golden ticket, absolutely dead heat.
Golden ticket.
Yep.
Golden ticket and Alpha.
Yeah. So he has the Travers experience. $950,000 as a yearling for this colt. Jose Ortiz I was very impressed with his Lexington, that fabulous rail run in the slot. He came back, he ran well in the Ohio Derby, but you know, I was perplexed, for lack of a better word, if that's the right word, why they ran him for that big number in the Saratoga Derby on the weeds. They worked him on the turf. Now they work him off the turf, 5 furlongs, breezing. The horse has talent because he's bred to win by curling. Like I said, $1 million purchase. I just can't endorse him on Travers Day. But remember, for the Kentucky Derby, he was the wise guy horse that everybody was talking about.
Oh, yeah.
And they scratched him out of the Derby. Remember that? A
Oh, yeah.
lot of people were compelled by him. And
I wasn't
what's that?
I wasn't one of them.
Okay. His 3-year-old campaign flattened out. So I think he's in the race. I look at him as a pretender like you guys, but you're going to see big things from this colt down the road, maybe as a 4-year-old, because he just has the making of a horse that should win and should have a good career.
Yeah, no, I actually agree with you, Gio. I don't blame Mcpeak's just trying to figure the horse out, and I totally get that. It's just weird when you're still trying to figure the horse out to throw him in a race like the Travers. I mean, to me, it's just a weird move, and I agree with you. And it's weird too because he's bred to Curlin, maybe the best long distance sire there is, and then to John's point, to a great sprinter on the dam side. So I'm wondering if they cut this horse back eventually, maybe he becomes like a mind control type horse where he's really good at that 7 furlong to a mile type race. But yeah, it's just a weird placement for me. I don't see it happening with King Fury.
Well, now to the moment of truth. This is where we separate the men from the boys, where you have to actually make a decision. Gio, who you going with in the Travers?
All right. It's as easy as 1, 2, 3. And in this case, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going with the upset. I believe in Midnight Bourbon.
Better than that.
What's that?
There's 7 horses in the race. You're gonna have to do better than that. Who's on? Who's on top?
All right, I'm going with Midnight Bourbon to upset the field because I feel like the pace is going to be oxbow moderate, 48 low, maybe 47 very high, and I think the horse has a big race in him. He's going to get a big ride, an aggressive ride from Santana. So I'm going to call the upset with tremendous amount of respect for Essential Quality. In a real tight race, he hangs on to win. Essential Quality second, Keepmeinmind third, and Dynamic 1 fourth. So 1, 2, 3, 4 is my order of finish.
I like it.
There you go.
Yeah, who you going with?
Yeah, very similar to Gio. Obviously, I just picked a different horse. So I'm going to pick Masqueparade on top. Going to play a Cold Exacta with him and Essential Quality on the second spot. And I'm going to play a try with that same Exacta with the 5 and the 3. So I think Miles D and Keepmeinmind have a great chance to get third. And then I'm going to play a double as well because I love Japan in the race prior. So I'm going to play a double to him in Masqueparade.
Okay. I'm probably not going to bet the Travers alone. Okay. It's a 7-horse field, and I'm going to probably bet the pick 6 and the pick 5 both and bet them hard. And I'm going to use 2 horses in the Travers. I'm going to look to beat Essential Quality, and I'm going to use Midnight Bourbon on the front end and be riding with Gio. And I'm also going to use Chad Brown's long shot, Miles D. So if things go the way I would hope them to go, I will be alive in the Travers with those 2 horses looking to beat Essential Quality in the pick 6 and the pick 5. If I lose and get knocked out and I'm sitting watching the Travers and I'm dead in the pick 5 and dead in the pick 6, I will bet one of those 2 horses, but I don't know now which one it would be. And like I said earlier, a big thing that will sway me one way or the other is how the track is playing. If the track is kind to speed, I do believe Midnight Bourbon's on the lead clear. So if the track is kind to speed, I will probably ride him home and bet 2 exactas, Midnight Bourbon to win and Midnight Bourbon over Essential Quality and Miles D. and that's it. If the track is not so good to speed and is a little heavy, and a lot of horses are coming from off the pace, then I may go with Chad's horse. But I hope to be alive with those two, and I hope that only using those two and both of them being decent prices allows me to go deep enough in the races leading up to that I can kind of assure myself of being alive.
Yeah.
And not having to make that game time decision, because I'd be much more comfortable, honestly, not having to make it and sit there and with the two horses I like and not have to worry about which one wins.
I actually think Miles D will be your third choice in the race. I really do. I think he's going to take a ton of money because there's so much sexy connections and buyer figures to make people like this horse. I think it's going to take quite a bit of money. I think it'll be below Dynamic One. I really do.
Well, if I'm out of the picks and I go that way, he'll take some money.
I'm going to make one more. The last comment I'm going to make is, again, with the pace. If it's 46-3 or less for the half mile, Essential Quality is going to just inhale the field late.
Agreed.
And Keepmeinmind is going to come.
Yeah, I disagree with that. I disagree with both of you on that. I think that Midnight Bourbon can go fast and run them off their heels and keep going. Good horse.
If he's uncontested, I think if he meets another horse, which in my opinion will be Masqueparade, I think.
And guys, take a look at his
horses can carry that speed.
Take a look at his imposing size too. He is a beautiful looking colt. He's a monster. He probably has 200 pounds on every other horse in the race. I'm telling you, he's a monster.
Well,
he's out of Tiz now in a Malibu Move mare. I wouldn't doubt it. So
it's going to be a fun day, gentlemen. Thank you so much for this roundtable. I'm going to call it the ultimate roundtable on the Travers. I think we did absolutely a deep dive on every horse. I think we have some interesting differing opinions, especially on pace and on some of the contenders. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. We welcome any comments. We'll have Saratoga today, the morning of the Travers, on the YouTube channel, talking about the other races and a little of the Travers as well. This will be up on Past the Wire TV and the website, but you probably already know that by now. So I guess we'll see what happens on Saturday, gentlemen. Thank you both for your time.
John, delighted to be here. Mike, I value your opinion greatly. And, John and I go back a long way, and I'm very happy to be acquainted with you now. This is a passion of mine.
Bedford Park.
Let's see how it pans out.
Bedford Park in the house. Gio and I go back to Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn, Bedford Park. I don't even know, 40, 50. I will even keep track of how many years. And two of our good friends are also from Bedford Park, pretty astute handicappers themselves. I give shout out to Paulie Iavera and Vinny Freeberg, who both follow Past the Wire, read this, and we've been friends with our whole lives. There's probably a few others, but that's part of that Bedford Park motley crew that we were associated with back in Sheepshead Bay.
And I'll tell you, Saratoga is going to be buzzing this weekend, man.
Yeah,
what I've seen in my 2 trips, they're going to get 50,000 people at the track, and what happens afterwards is just nuts.
Yeah, it's
$70 million handle.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's one of the great.
John, I'm gonna dig deep into the pick 5 as well. Very intrigued. 6 graded stakes races. No, 7. 6 grade 1s and a grade 2, and we get to see Whitmore and Life is Good and Jackie's Warrior. They're all there tomorrow.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I'll shut this off and we can say goodbye off the camera. And ciao for now, everybody.
Ciao for now.
Ciao.
Nobody does it better.